Welcome back to 30 Days of Going Inside, because we can't go outside. I hope you enjoyed the body scan meditation that Louise did yesterday. And today we're going to be exploring our thinking minds and that difference between thinking and thoughts. And we've called today's practice Hooked. So why have we called it Hooked, Lou?
We're using the word hooked to describe how it is when our mind takes our attention away from something. So we might be moving in the direction of perhaps having a conversation with friends or going out on a date, and then our mind might hook us with the thought that no one really likes you, Louise, or what if they don't show up? And when we're on that hook, we're no longer moving in the direction we want to, we're left dangling on the hook. And all our attention is focused internally on this hook and the ruminations and things, rather than being present with what's going on externally.
So how many thoughts do we have a day?
Well, according to research, we have between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts a day. I don't know who had to count those, but there we go. And we know that about 85% of them are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. So I'm really aware of how boring my mind is sometimes. It gives me the same thoughts over and over and over again. And if those thoughts are negative or self-critical or judgmental, then we can see how toxic it can be if we spend so much time hooked or in our heads.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of what we were talking about on day 8 in Awaken, around how much of our thoughts are on the past and on the future, and how little of our thoughts are actually on the present moment. And as someone who works a lot with young people, so often do young people confuse thoughts for facts and actually believe everything that their mind tells them, which can actually be quite a dangerous place for any of us to be. So Lou, can you think of any of your hooks?
Yeah, I could share a thought that hooks me quite a lot, which is that I am missing out. So interestingly, I always use this one as an example when I think about my hooks, but I'm very aware that because I'm so familiar with it now, I'm actually hooked by it much less as a result of that. But it still grabs me sometimes. I remember running past the pub and seeing some friends of mine sharing a drink together, and it was very present. It's immediately there.
And how old is that thought, Lou? Literally, how old is that thought?
Okay, so I reckon that thought is probably 45 years old.
Yeah, I would say it probably
it's not
is.
new.
No, it's pretty dusty, an antique thought, and less of a dictator thought than it was.
Yeah, definitely. And so what about you, Ray? I know we're sisters and we probably know each other's hooks quite well.
Well,
why don't you share one of your hooks?
I'm going to say. So mine is, and it's going to make you laugh, and I always think the reason you laugh at it is because you know it to be true. So I don't think it's a thought, I think it's a belief that I'm a little bit thick.
Okay, so I'm the I'm thick thought.
Yeah, so I am thick, and it's really interesting that I know that my family members can see when I'm hooked. They've actually commented to me that they can see a change in my behaviour, avoiding eye contact, and I say a lot less than I would do normally. That one has been around for probably about 48 years. And the very fact that...
And I feel, I feel terrible that we're laughing about it, but I do feel that the fact that we're laughing about it shows that we're able to unhook from it. If we're able to laugh about it, that softens it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that's really important. I think that ability to hold it lightly has actually been the reason why that thought has not become a belief for me. And sometimes I think as well, same as we were talking about in the earlier videos on emotions, the very fact that we can label this stuff as being positive, negative, true, false, isn't helpful either. So we want to kind of introduce a little bit around using the language of, is that thought helpful? Or is that thought unhelpful, rather than...
Does it serve me?
Yeah, and especially when you're working with kids, they tend to say, but it's true, Rachel, it's true. Everybody does hate me. And then I can kind of say, well, does that serve you well? Is that helpful or is that unhelpful? And I think there's a lovely exercise that we learnt a while ago now that we often use. And I was wondering whether now might be a good time for you to share that with us, Lou.
Sure. So I want you all to just take your hands and put them in front of you like I'm doing here. And I want you to imagine that these hands represent one of those thoughts that perhaps you're realizing is one of your hooks. So if there's a really big sort of fat hook that feels a bit heavy, don't use that one right now. Just think about one of the ones like I'm missing out, or, you know, just something that feels that it's kind of there, but it's not the biggest hook. Okay, and just recognize that these hands represent that thought. And then very slowly, just as I'm doing, we're going to slowly start bringing this thought closer and closer. And as you bring your hands up like I'm doing, I want you to just notice what happens to the rest of the room and how connected you feel with me. And just hold your thoughts there for a moment in front of your face, and remember these hands are representing your thoughts, and just notice how connected you feel to the room, how aware you are of what's going on around you, and notice what it feels like. And then very gently, just start to bring your hands away. And as you slowly start to bring your hands back down, away from your face, gradually start to notice what's going on around you. Notice me, and notice what it feels like to have your thoughts and your hands as your thoughts down here in front of you. And notice that these thoughts haven't gone away, they're still here. And just notice what it feels like to have them here, and notice what it felt like when they were here. So that's a really lovely way of just helping to really come into contact with what it feels like to be hooked.
Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Lou. Kind of reminds me about all the energy that we put into trying not to have thoughts, to try and turn our minds off, and to sometimes kind of stop that stream of consciousness. And one of those exercises is around trying not to think of something. So I'm going to invite you all over the next 20 seconds to not think about pink elephants. So I don't need to think about anything that has anything to do with the colour pink or elephants. So try not to think about pink elephants. And kind of what you might notice is something that looks a little bit like this. In order to not think about pink elephants, sometimes all we do is think about pink elephants. So I don't know how well you did in that exercise, but it can be really hard to put energy into, not thinking of something, because we tend to think of it even more.
Exactly. So, and yet why do we do that? We always say to ourselves, I'm just not going to think about X today. I'm not going to think about it. And we can put a lot of energy into that, but then A, we exhaust ourselves, and B, the thought remains. In fact, it can come back with a vengeance. So instead of trying not to think something, what we're trying to do is to start to cultivate this position of looking at our thoughts and seeing them as passing events, like leaves that are passing in a stream or cars that are going underneath a bridge. And we're going to talk to you a bit more about how we can strengthen that practice and learn skills and ways of doing that in our session tomorrow, which is going to be called Unhooked. So between now and then, just see if you can, start to think about what is it that's hooked you, and are there moments in your day where perhaps your thoughts were here, and are there moments in your day where you were able to hold them more lightly and have them here? What did it feel like? Just noticing the difference and just sort of gently starting to familiarise yourself with what hooks you.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay,
All
see
right.
you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.